February 14th. Valentine's Day. The Mediterranean restaurant in South Beach had never looked more beautiful. The entire place had been rented out for one couple. Every table was cleared except one in the center of the room. White roses covered the floor and walls. Soft candlelight glowed against glass windows. A string quartet played slow, romantic music near the corner. Zara Bennett sat at the table in an ivory silk dress that shimmered under the lights. The fabric hugged her gently, elegant and soft. Her brown skin glowed warmly. Her hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders. She looked calm, happy, completely unaware that the night would end in blood. Across from her sat Adrian Vale. For once he looked relaxed. His sharp features were softer tonight. His dark eyes were warm instead of guarded. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists. He looked less like the man people feared and more like a husband in love. "You didn't have to do all this," Zara said, looking around at the roses. "I wanted to," Adrian replied quietly. "You deserve it." The music continued. The candles flickered. Outside, the ocean breeze brushed the glass windows. At 8:32 p.m., Adrian's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and frowned slightly. "I have to take this," he said. "Business. I'll be right back." Zara nodded. "Don't take too long." He walked toward the back hallway, phone to his ear. Zara picked up her champagne glass and smiled to herself. She felt lucky. Well, safe. Then the front doors exploded. The sound was deafening. Glass shattered inward. Wood splintered across the floor. The quartet screamed and dropped their instruments. Candles fell. The music stopped. 7 masked men in tactical gear stormed into the restaurant. They moved fast and in formation. Automatic weapons raised. Zara froze. One of the men stepped forward. Taller than the rest. Confident. He removed his mask. Viktor Petrov. His cold eyes locked on Zara. He lifted his gun and aimed it directly at her chest. "Mrs. Vale," he said calmly. "Happy Valentine's Day." Zara's training as an ER nurse kicked in. "Breathe. Assess. Stay calm." Her hand moved slowly toward her purse where she kept pepper spray. She didn't move fast enough. Gunfire erupted. Adrian came around the corner at the exact moment Victor pulled the trigger. Adrian did not hesitate. He launched himself across the restaurant. He hit Zara with full force, knocking her backward as bullets tore through the space where she had been sitting. The table flipped. Plates shattered. Champagne sprayed across the floor. Adrian wrapped his body over hers, shielding her completely. More shots rang out. Then Zara felt it. A sharp, burning pain below her ribs. Warmth spread across her side. Adrian looked down. The ivory silk was turning red. "Zara," he whispered, panic breaking through his calm. Blood soaked through his hands as he pressed against her wound. From the kitchen entrance, Marcus and the security team rushed in. They opened fire immediately. The restaurant filled with smoke and chaos. 3 attackers dropped inside the restaurant. 2 fled through the shattered doors. Victor disappeared in the confusion. Adrian did not chase. He lifted Zara into his arms. "Stay with me," he ordered. Her face was pale. Her breathing shallow. Marcus shouted, "SUV is ready." They moved through the back exit. An armored black SUV waited with the engine running. Adrian climbed into the back seat, holding Zara tightly against his chest. He pressed his hand firmly against the wound to stop the bleeding. "Drive," he said. The SUV sped into the night. The 12-minute drive to Mount Sinai Medical Center felt endless. Zara's eyes fluttered. "Adrian," she whispered weakly. "I'm here," he said, his voice shaking despite his effort to stay strong. "Stay awake." The SUV ran red lights. Other cars swerved out of the way. When they arrived, Adrian carried Zara inside himself. "Gunshot wound," he said to the nearest doctor. "Right side. Below the ribs." The emergency room froze for a moment. The nurses recognized her. "Zara?" Shock spread across their faces. They rushed into action immediately. She was placed on a stretcher. 4 lines were inserted. Monitors beeped rapidly. Adrian stayed at her side. "You can't go past this point," a doctor told him as they prepared for surgery. "I'm not leaving," Adrian replied. His tone made it clear there would be no argument. They allowed him to remain through triage. Marcus approached quietly. 7 total, he said. 3 confirmed dead inside. 2 escaped. We're tracking the rest. Adrian's eyes darkened. "Find them all," he said. Zara was wheeled toward the operating room. "Save her," Adrian told the surgical team. "Whatever it takes." The doors closed. He stood in the hallway covered in her blood. The surgery lasted 4 hours. The bullet had struck below her ribs and nicked her liver. She lost a dangerous amount of blood. Surgeons worked carefully, repairing the damage and removing the bullet. Finally, a doctor stepped out. "She's stable," he said. "We repaired the liver. She's going to make it." Adrian closed his eyes. For a moment he allowed himself to breathe. When he entered the recovery room, Zara looked small in the hospital bed. Tubes and wires surrounded her. He sat beside her and took her hand. For the first time that night he broke. Silent tears fell as he pressed his forehead against her fingers. A few minutes later, her eyes opened slowly. "You look terrible," she murmured weakly. He let out a broken laugh. "You were shot." "I noticed." She studied his face carefully. "You're going to go after them," she said softly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She already knew. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me you'll come back alive." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. "I'll come back," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. She knew what that meant. And she knew there would be blood. But she held his hand anyway. And the war had already begun. 18 months earlier. 11:07 p.m. The Brickell parking garage was almost empty. The air smelled like oil and warm concrete. The lights above flickered softly, casting long shadows across the empty spaces. Zara Bennett stood beside her vintage Mustang, staring at the open hood in frustration. "Come on," she muttered. The engine had refused to start. The battery was dead. She checked her phone. No signal down here. Of course. Zara tied her hair back tighter and reached into the trunk. She pulled out a tire iron and held it firmly in her hand. She was not the type of woman who waited helplessly for someone to rescue her. Footsteps echoed across the garage. Slow. Measured. Confident. Zara's shoulders stiffened. She turned, tire iron raised. A man stepped out from between two parked cars. He wore a perfectly fitted dark suit. The jacket sat clean against his broad shoulders. His tie was straight. His shoes polished. Even in the dim lighting he looked sharp and controlled. His face was calm. His eyes were dark and steady. "You're going to hurt someone with that," he said mildly, glancing at the tire iron. "Only if they deserve it," Zara replied. His gaze shifted to the open hood of her Mustang. "Battery's dead," he said. "I noticed." He stepped closer but not too close. Just enough to examine the engine. "I have cables," he offered. Zara did not lower the tire iron. "That convenient?" He gave a faint smile. "I'm prepared." She studied him carefully. He did not look nervous. He did not look like he meant harm. But he also did not look like an ordinary man. "Fine," she said finally. "But I'm watching you." He walked to a black luxury sedan parked a few spaces away and returned with jumper cables. He worked quickly and confidently. He rolled up his sleeves without complaint, his expensive watch catching the light as he connected the clamps. "You do this often?" Zara asked. "Sometimes," he replied. She noticed his hands. No hesitation. No confusion. He knew what he was doing. "Start it," he said. She slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life. Relief washed over her face. "Thank you," she said honestly. He stepped back, wiping his hands with a clean handkerchief. "You're welcome." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Can I buy you dinner as thanks?" His eyes sharpened slightly. "Tomorrow night." That wasn't a question. Now it is. She laughed softly. Confident. "Yes." She considered him for a second longer. "Okay," she said. "Dinner." He gave her his number. She saved it under Battery Man. He noticed and smiled. The next evening, they met at a Mediterranean rooftop restaurant overlooking the Miami skyline. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and citrus. Soft lights hung above the tables. The view was beautiful. Adrian Vale arrived first. When Zara walked in he stood. She wore a simple but elegant black dress. He noticed everything, the way she carried herself, the way her eyes scanned the room without fear. The staff greeted him with unusual respect. Too respectful. Zara noticed. They bowed slightly. They moved quickly. They avoided eye contact. "You must come here often," she said as they sat. "Occasionally," he replied. "What do you do?" she asked. "Logistics and imports," he said calmly. "That sounds vague." "It is." She laughed again. "And you?" he asked. "I'm an ER nurse." He studied her more closely. "That explains a lot." "Like what?" "You're not easily shaken." She shrugged. I see worse things than parking garages. Dinner flowed easily. Conversation moved without effort. There was tension between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was magnetic. By the fourth date, Zara's patience wore thin. Your place? She said one evening. Adrian paused. Excuse me? I've shown you my condo. Now it's your turn. There was a flicker in his eyes. Fine, he said finally. He drove her to Sunny Isles. The elevator opened directly into an oceanfront penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the dark Atlantic stretching endlessly. The apartment was modern and clean, almost too clean. Everything looked untouched. You weren't kidding about logistics, she said, stepping inside. She placed grocery bags on the counter. You're cooking? He asked. Yes. She made Caribbean rice and jerk chicken. The kitchen filled with warm, spicy scent. Adrian stood near the island watching her. You don't cook? She asked. I don't usually have a reason to. She glanced at him. Tell me something real, she said softly. He was quiet for a moment. When I'm with you, he said carefully, I forget what I am. She turned fully toward him. What are you? He looked at her long and steady. Not someone you should feel safe with. She stepped closer instead of away. And yet, she said, I do. That night changed everything. The kiss started soft, slow, testing. It deepened quickly. They moved toward the bedroom without speaking. Clothes fell away in quiet urgency. It was not rushed, not careless. It was intense and deliberate. Later, they lay tangled in expensive sheets, the ocean visible beyond the glass walls. I'm falling in love with you, Adrian said into the darkness. Zara rested her head against his chest. That scares you, she said. Yes. Why? He didn't answer fully, but his silence said enough. The next morning his phone rang early. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Marcus's voice was firm on the other end. You're distracted, Marcus said. This woman, she doesn't know who you are. I know. Viktor Petrov is pushing boundaries again. Adrian's expression hardened. Handle it, he said. Later that week, Adrian met Viktor in a warehouse. Viktor was loud, arrogant, careless. You're distracted, Viktor said. Got yourself a pretty nurse. Adrian went still. What did you say? Viktor laughed. The ER girl. That was all it took. Adrian moved faster than Viktor expected. He grabbed him and slammed him into the concrete floor with violent force. You don't speak her name, Adrian said quietly. Viktor coughed, stunned. You don't think about her. You don't look at her. He released him slowly. Understood. Viktor nodded weakly. Adrian straightened his suit jacket and walked away. But something had shifted. A line had been crossed. And in that warehouse, beneath the smell of metal and concrete, the first seed of revenge was planted. Zara came home after a long shift at the hospital expecting silence. Instead, she opened her Coral Gables condo door and froze. White roses were everywhere. They covered the coffee table, the kitchen counter, the windowsills. Petals lined the hallway floor. The soft scent filled the entire apartment. In the center of the dining table sat a small velvet box. Her heart skipped. She walked toward it slowly and opened it. Inside was a delicate white gold bracelet with a single diamond charm. Simple. Elegant. Expensive. Her phone rang. Adrian. She answered immediately. Did you buy out a flower shop? His voice on the other end sounded serious. Do you like them? They're beautiful, she admitted. Adrian. What's going on? There was a pause. I need to tell you the truth, he said. Her stomach tightened. What truth? Not over the phone. I'm picking you up tomorrow morning. The next day he drove her south, away from the city. They crossed the bridge toward Key Biscayne. The road narrowed. Palm trees lined the edges. The ocean stretched wide and calm beside them. They arrived at a private beachfront villa. It was quiet. Isolated. Just the sound of waves and wind. They walked along the shore in silence. Zara waited. Adrian stopped near the water. He faced the ocean instead of her. I run the Veil Syndicate, he said plainly. The words hung in the air. Zara did not speak. It's not just logistics, he continued. It's arms, territory, protection networks, deals that are not legal. She folded her arms across her chest. How illegal? She asked quietly. Very. He turned to face her. I control shipments. I control territory. I control men who enforce it. She held his gaze. And the violence? He did not look away. 17 confirmed kills, he said. The ocean waves crashed behind them. Zara felt her pulse in her ears. He stepped closer and slowly removed his shirt. Scars marked his torso. Knife wounds, bullet wounds, old and new. "This is the life I was born into," he said, "and the one I chose to lead." She stared at the scars. "You lied to me," she said. "Yes." "For months." "Yes." She walked away a few steps, running a hand through her hair. "You let me fall for you without knowing who you really are." "I know." "Why now?" she asked sharply. "Because I love you," he answered. The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. "You love me," she repeated. "And you thought I'd what? Just accept this?" "I thought you'd leave." She looked at him carefully. "And if I do?" He swallowed once. "Then I'll let you." Silence stretched between them. Zara turned toward the ocean again. "I work in an ER," she said finally. "I see gunshots, stabbings, domestic violence. I see people at their worst." She faced him again. "You think I don't know darkness?" "This is different," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "It is." She stepped closer. "But you came here to tell me. You didn't hide it forever. You gave me the truth." She placed her hands on his chest. "If I stay," she said carefully, "I stay with my eyes open." Adrian waited. "I will not be hidden," she continued. "I will not be treated like something fragile that needs to be locked away." He nodded slowly. "I want partnership," she said. "If I'm choosing you, I'm choosing all of you. And you choose all of me." "I agree," he said without hesitation. "You don't get to shut me out of your life." "I won't." She studied him one more time. "I choose you," she said. The relief in his expression was immediate. At sunset, with the sky painted in orange and pink, he dropped to one knee. "Marry me," he said simply. She laughed softly through her tears. "You're insane." "Yes." She held out her hand. "Yes." The wedding was small and quiet. Close friends only. No press. No large guest list. Lorraine Bennett flew in from Atlanta. She pulled Zara aside before the ceremony. "That man is dangerous," Lorraine said firmly. "I know." "You sure about this?" "Yes." Lorraine studied her daughter's face and sighed. "Then make sure he never forgets who you are." Married life settled into a strange balance. Zara moved into the Sunny Isles penthouse. She kept her job at the ER. Adrian kept his promise. She was not hidden. Bodyguards followed her discreetly. They never hovered too close, but they were always there. Adrian was protective. But he never told her to quit her job. He never locked her inside. He respected her. One afternoon at the hospital, a doctor became too comfortable. He touched Zara's waist as he passed her in a hallway. She brushed it off. The next day, Adrian appeared at the hospital during her lunch break. He kissed her slowly in front of everyone. The doctor watched from across the cafeteria. Adrian walked over calmly. "You should be careful where you put your hands," he said in a quiet voice. The doctor swallowed and nodded. He transferred to another hospital within the month. Adrian never mentioned it again. As February approached, Adrian began planning Valentine's Day. White roses instead of red. A private dinner. A memory meant to be perfect. While Zara focused on long shifts and patient charts, Viktor Petrov was watching. He had not forgotten the warehouse humiliation. He had not forgotten being slammed into concrete. Quietly, he began building a coalition. He contacted men with grudges. Men who had lost money, territory, pride. 7 agreed. 7 armed men willing to make a statement. Valentine's Day. The most romantic night of the year. The perfect time to strike. And while Zara believed she was stepping into a celebration of love, the storm was already forming. The ICU was quiet. Machines hummed softly. Monitors blinked with steady rhythm. The air smelled clean and sterile. Pale morning light slipped through the blinds. Zara lay in the hospital bed, pale but breathing steadily. A bandage covered the wound below her ribs. And 4-line ran into her arm. A heart monitor tracked each beat. Adrian sat beside her. He had not left. His suit jacket was gone. His shirt was wrinkled and stained. His hands were clean now, but he could still feel the warmth of her blood on them. He watched her chest rise and fall. He listened to every machine. He counted every second. The door opened quietly. Marcus stepped inside. He closed the door behind him and stood near the wall, respectful but firm. "Report," Adrian said without looking away from Zara. Marcus kept his voice low. 3 confirmed dead inside the restaurant. Adrian nodded once. 2 escaped during the firefight. Silence. And 2 unidentified. "We're working on faces and connections." Adrian finally looked at him. Total 7, he said. Yes. Marcus paused. We're tracking movements. Cameras. Vehicles. Contacts. Adrian's jaw tightened. Good. Marcus studied his friend carefully. What are you planning? Adrian stood slowly. He walked to the window and looked out over Miami as the first light of dawn crept across the skyline. 7 days, he said quietly. Marcus did not speak. 1 per day. The words hung in the air like a sentence already carried out. Marcus exhaled once. That will send a message. That's the point. Behind them, Zara shifted slightly in the bed. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked tired but alert. Adrian moved back to her immediately. I'm here, he said softly. She studied his face. She knew that look. The stillness. The cold calm. How many? She asked quietly. He did not pretend not to understand. 7, he said. Inside. 3 dead. And the rest? 2 escaped. 2 not identified yet. She held his gaze. And what are you going to do? He did not lie. 7 days, he said. 1 per day. Her eyes closed briefly. She had expected that answer. She reached for his hand. He took it carefully. You don't have to tell me not to, he said gently. I won't, she replied. He blinked in surprise. I'm not going to beg you to stop, she continued. The machines continued their steady rhythm. You won't listen anyway. He almost smiled. No. But, she said firmly, squeezing his fingers weakly, you will promise me something. Anything. You survive it. He leaned closer so she could see his eyes clearly. I will. No reckless anger. No rushing in alone. No acting like you have nothing to lose. I won't. You come back to me, she whispered. His voice softened. I always come back. She searched his face for a long moment. I know what you are, she said quietly. I knew before last night. He said nothing. I chose you anyway, she continued. I don't regret that. But if you die chasing revenge, then what was the point of surviving the bullet? His throat tightened. I won't die, he said. That's not what I asked. He closed his eyes briefly. I promised to survive. She nodded once. That's all I need. Marcus stepped forward. We have movement already, he said carefully. Adrian straightened. Zara noticed the shift immediately. The softness disappeared. The steel returned. Go, she said quietly. He hesitated for a second. Then he bent down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. I'll be back before sunset, he said. You better be. He stepped back. The door opened, then closed. Zara lay still for a moment. The room felt emptier instantly. She stared at the ceiling. She did not cry. She knew who she had married. Outside the sky was pale gray. Adrian walked through the hospital hallway with controlled steps. Doctors and nurses moved around him, unaware of the storm that was forming. Marcus caught up beside him. Vehicles are ready, Marcus said. Where's the first lead? Little Havana. Motel on Flagler. Adrian nodded once. They stepped outside. The air was cool and heavy with early morning humidity. An armored SUV waited at the curb. Adrian paused before getting in. He looked back at the hospital entrance. One light still glowed in the ICU wing. He imagined her lying there, bandaged, breathing, alive. He exhaled slowly. Then he got into the vehicle. The door shut firmly. Marcus sat beside him. 7 days, Marcus repeated quietly. Adrian stared straight ahead. They chose Valentine's Day, he said. They wanted symbolism. They wanted weakness. They'll get the opposite. The engine started. The SUV pulled away from the hospital curb. Miami streets were still quiet. Sunrise painted the sky in pale orange. Adrian's face was calm. Too calm. Inside, everything had shifted. There was no hesitation now. No confusion. Only direction. 7 men. 7 days. He had given his word. To her. He would survive. But first, they would understand exactly what it meant to cross that line. The SUV disappeared into the city. And the campaign began. Day 1, Little Havana. The motel sat on a quiet street in Little Havana. Faded paint. Flickering neon sign. Curtains drawn tight. Adrian entered alone. No warning. No hesitation. The man inside the room barely had time to react. The door burst open. The attacker reached for a weapon on the nightstand. Adrian was faster. He closed the distance in seconds. No gun. No noise. Just hands. It was brutal and direct. Bone met bone. The room filled with sharp, heavy sounds. The man fought, but fear made him slow. Adrian did not speak. He did not shout. When it was over, the room was silent. He stepped back, breathing steady. Then he took a knife from the motel desk and carved a single word into the wall above the bed. 6. He left without looking back. Day 2, Miami International Airport. The second man tried to run. He had a passport in his hand and a ticket out of the country. He moved through the airport quickly, looking over his shoulder every few steps. He never made it past security. 2 of Adrian's men intercepted him quietly and pulled him into a maintenance corridor. The hallway smelled like cleaning chemicals and metal. He begged. He promised information. He promised money. Adrian arrived 15 minutes later. He listened without expression. "You followed orders," the man said desperately. "So did you," Adrian replied calmly. There was no anger in his voice. No shouting. Just finality. The execution was clean. Precise. Quiet. By the time the airport reopened that corridor, nothing remained. Day 3, Fort Lauderdale Safe House. The third man hid in a guarded house near Fort Lauderdale. Security cameras covered every corner. Armed men stood watch. It did not matter. Adrian waited until nightfall. Then the fire started. Flames climbed the walls quickly. Smoke poured into the sky. The guards scattered. The man inside tried to escape through the back. He ran into the yard coughing, clothes half burned. Adrian stood near the edge of the property. The man stumbled toward the street. A single shot rang out. The body fell onto the grass. The house burned behind him. Adrian turned away before the fire trucks arrived. Day 4, Police Corruption. The fourth man believed the police would save him. He walked into a station shaking and demanded protection. He gave statements. He claimed his life was in danger. The detective who took his report nodded calmly. That detective worked for Adrian. The holding cell camera malfunctioned for exactly 3 minutes. When the lights came back on, the cell was empty. No one asked questions. No report was filed. The man was never seen again. Day 5, Port of Tampa. The fifth man thought distance would protect him. He hid in the cargo hold of a shipping container bound for another country. Metal walls surrounded him. Darkness pressed in. He thought he was safe. The container door opened suddenly. Light poured in. Adrian stepped inside alone. The space was tight. The air thick. There was nowhere to run. The confrontation was short. The sound of metal echoed inside the container. When Adrian stepped back out onto the dock, the port looked peaceful. Water moved gently against the pier. The door of the container shut again. Day 6, Asheville Monastery. The sixth man chose faith. He shaved his beard, changed his clothes, traded weapons for robes. He hid inside a monastery outside Asheville, North Carolina. He believed no one would search there. He was wrong. Adrian entered the chapel quietly. Candles flickered along the walls. The man looked up and froze. "You came?" he whispered. "Yes." The man fell to his knees. "I can tell you where he is," he said quickly. "I can tell you where Victor is." Adrian stood still. "Speak." The confession came fast. An abandoned compound in the Everglades. Guarded. Fortified. Prepared. Adrian listened carefully. When the man finished, he closed his eyes and waited. Adrian kept his word. The monastery returned to silence. Day 7, Everglades Compound. The compound stood deep in the Everglades, surrounded by water and thick brush. Guard towers. Heavy gates. Armed men. Adrian did not come alone this time. 30 men moved with him. Tactical gear. Night vision. Precision. The strike began at dawn. Gunfire shattered the morning stillness. Smoke filled the air. Men fell on both sides. The outer gates were breached. The guards were outmatched. Adrian moved through the compound without hesitation. He reached the basement level last. The door was reinforced. He kicked it open. Victor stood inside with a gun in his hand. He did not look surprised. "You came?" Victor said calmly. "Yes." "You killed them all?" "Almost." Victor laughed softly. "For a woman?" Adrian stepped forward. "For my wife." "You were stronger before," Victor taunted. "Now you bleed." Adrian stopped a few feet away. "She made me human," he said quietly. Victor raised his gun. He hesitated. That was his mistake. Adrian disarmed him quickly. The weapon fell to the floor. They stood face to face. "Kill me," Victor said bitterly. "Finish it." Adrian studied him for a long moment. "No." Victor frowned. "You don't deserve a clean end," Adrian said calmly. He stepped closer. You will leave this country tonight. You will never return. Victor's expression changed. And if I don't? Adrian's voice lowered. If you ever come near my wife again, I will not come for you. Victor swallowed. I will go to everyone you love. The silence in the room was heavy. Your family, Adrian continued. Every name. Every address. Victor's face drained of color. You understand? Yes. Adrian stepped back. Disappear. Victor did. That night he left the country. Adrian walked out of the compound as the sun rose over the Everglades. 7 days. 6 dead. 1 exiled. The message was clear. No one touched what was his, and lived without fear. The hospital hallway felt different this time. Quieter. So, Adrian walked through the sliding glass doors of Mount Sinai Medical Center just before sunset. He had changed his clothes. He looked clean, controlled, calm. But there was something heavier in his eyes. He did not stop at the front desk. He knew the way. When he entered Zara's room, she was sitting upright in bed. The monitor still beeped softly beside her. The bandage below her ribs was visible beneath the loose hospital gown. Her skin had color again. She looked tired but strong. She looked up the moment he stepped inside. She didn't smile. She studied him. It's done, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Adrian closed the door behind him. Yes. She held his gaze. All 7? He walked closer. 6 dead, he answered calmly. 1 gone. She nodded slowly. No surprise. No shock. Just understanding. Silence filled the room for a long moment. Then something shifted. Her shoulders relaxed. His jaw unclenched. The tension that had lived between them for 7 days slowly loosened. She reached for him. He stepped forward and took her hand carefully. Her fingers were warm. You came back, she said softly. I told you I would. She looked into his eyes. Really looked. She was searching. Not for details. For damage. For cracks. For something lost. He let her look. I'm here, he said quietly. Her lips trembled slightly before she pressed them together. Then she let out a slow breath. The emotional weight of the week finally settled. She pulled him closer. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her slowly, mindful of her injury. Her breathing steadied. His hand moved through her hair. No violence. No anger. Just quiet relief. After a few minutes, she pulled back slightly. Take me home, she said. He frowned softly. Doctor said another few days. I'm stronger than I look, she replied. He hesitated. She raised one eyebrow. You really think I want to recover in this room? A small smile touched his mouth. He nodded once. Okay. The discharge process moved quickly. Nurses hugged her gently. Doctors gave final instructions. Marcus waited outside without speaking. When they reached the hospital exit, Adrian didn't allow her to walk. I can manage, she protested lightly. No, he said. He lifted her into his arms carefully. The evening air outside was warm. The sky was fading into deep orange. He carried her to the waiting SUV as if she weighed nothing, as if she were something fragile. Inside the penthouse, everything was quiet. The ocean beyond the windows reflected the last light of the day. He set her gently on the couch. Pillows, blankets, water, medication. He moved with quiet care. I'm not helpless, she said softly. I know. He crouched in front of her. You were shot 8 days ago. She reached forward and pulled him closer by his shirt collar. Their faces were inches apart. I need to feel normal, she whispered. He paused. Then he nodded slowly. He lifted her carefully and carried her toward the bedroom. He placed her gently onto the bed, moving with caution. What followed was not rushed. It was not wild. It was slow, careful, tender. His hands moved over her like she was something sacred. He avoided the bandage. He avoided pressure. Every touch was deliberate. She touched him back with equal softness. No fear. No urgency. Just connection. It was not about desire alone. It was about grounding. About reminding themselves that they were still here. Still alive. Still together. Afterward, they lay side by side beneath the soft sheets. Her head rested on his chest. His fingers traced light patterns along her arm. The room was dark except for the glow of city lights through the windows. You look tired, she said quietly. I'm fine. She lifted her head slightly. No, she corrected. You're not. He didn't answer. She placed her palm against his cheek. You kept your promise. Yes. She studied his face again. You didn't let it consume you. He let out a slow breath. It almost did. But it didn't. He looked at her carefully. You keep me human, he said quietly. The words were simple. Honest. She smiled faintly. You were human before me. Not like this. She shifted closer against him. You came back, she repeated softly. I always will. She closed her eyes. The ocean outside moved in steady rhythm. For the first time since Valentine's Day, the penthouse felt peaceful again. The war was over. The threat was gone. And in the quiet darkness, they held each other not as warrior and target, but as husband and wife. Alive. Together. Human. The recovery took time. Zara healed slowly but steadily. The scar below her ribs faded from angry red to soft pink. She moved carefully at first, then with more confidence. Adrian watched her every step, though he tried not to make it obvious. By the third week she was strong enough to travel. They left Miami quietly. No public announcements. No large security presence. Just a private flight heading west. Aspen greeted them with cold air and white mountains that stretched endlessly into the sky. The lodge sat high above the town. Wood beams. Stone fireplace. Large windows overlooking snow-covered slopes. Everything was quiet. The silence felt different from Miami. There were no sirens. No traffic. No tension. Just snow. Adrian turned his phone off the moment they entered the lodge. Zara noticed. No calls? She asked. None, he replied. For how long? As long as you want. She smiled softly. They spent their morning skiing. Zara moved carefully at first. Adrian stayed close, ready to catch her if she slipped. But she adjusted quickly. By the second day she was laughing as she raced him down gentle slopes. The cold air flushed her cheeks pink. Her laughter echoed across the snow. Adrian watched her more than he skied. Alive. Free. Unafraid. At night they stayed inside by the fireplace. Thick blankets. Warm drinks. The crackling sound of burning wood filled the lodge. They talked more here. Without phones. Without interruption. Sometimes they said nothing at all. Just sat close together listening to the wind outside. One evening after dinner they stepped onto the balcony. The mountains stretched beneath the fading sun. Snow reflected gold and soft blue. Zara wrapped herself in his coat. Adrian stood behind her, arms around her waist. It's peaceful, she whispered. Yes. He rested his chin lightly against her head. I could leave it, he said suddenly. She turned slightly. Leave what? Everything. She looked up at him. The business, he continued. The territory. The control. She blinked. I could retire, he said simply. We could move somewhere like this. Open something small. Quiet. The air between them shifted. You'd give it all up? She asked softly. For you, he answered without hesitation. She studied his face carefully. He meant it. He would walk away from power and danger without regret if she asked. She reached up and touched his cheek. I don't want that. He frowned slightly. You don't? She shook her head. I chose all of you, she said. Not just the calm parts. The mountains were silent around them. I knew who you were, she continued. I didn't marry someone pretending to be different. He watched her closely. You don't scare me, she added. Your world does sometimes. But you don't. He exhaled slowly. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she said. But if I walk away, it won't erase what I've done. I know. She stepped closer. Running doesn't change history. And I don't want you to feel small just to keep me safe. He absorbed that. You don't want a simpler life? He asked quietly. She smiled. I want a balanced one. He raised an eyebrow. That means, she said gently, we build space like this when it gets heavy. He looked out at the mountains again. Escape when needed, she clarified. He nodded slowly. Together. Yes, she said. Always together. The wind brushed against the balcony. He leaned down and kissed her softly. Not urgent. Not desperate. Just steady. They returned inside. The fire glowed warmly. They slept that night without tension. No shadows in the corners. No silent threats in the distance. Just snow falling quietly outside. The remaining days passed gently. Morning slopes. Afternoon walks through town. Evening dinners by the fire. Adrian kept his phone off. For once, nothing demanded his attention. On their final morning, They stood outside again watching the sunrise paint the mountains in pale pink and white. "We'll come back," he said. "Yes. And next time no reason except rest." She nodded. They returned to Miami a few days later. The air was warmer. The skyline familiar. The ocean steady. When Adrian stepped back into his office for the first time, the room felt smaller than before. Not because it had changed, but because he had. He carried something steadier now. Something grounded. He had faced rage. He had faced fear. And he had stepped away long enough to breathe. Zara returned to the hospital the next week. Her colleagues welcomed her back carefully. She moved confidently through the ER again. Focused, strong, alive. At night, when she returned to the penthouse, Adrian met her at the door. The balance felt clearer. Or, home. Silence when needed. Storm when required. They had not escaped their world. They had chosen how to move within it. Stronger. More certain. Snow had given them clarity. Silence had given them perspective. And Miami welcomed them back not as survivors, but as partners who understood exactly what they were fighting for. The conference room was silent when Adrian walked in. Every chair was filled. Men who controlled territories, shipments, alliances. Men who had watched him closely during his absence. Some had whispered that he had gone soft. Some believed marriage had changed him. They were about to be corrected. Adrian did not rush. He entered calmly, wearing a dark suit that fit him perfectly. His expression was composed, unreadable. He took his seat at the head of the table without asking permission. No one spoke. He placed a folder on the table and opened it slowly. "Territory adjustments," he said in a steady voice. "New rules. New lines." He explained the changes clearly. Distribution routes would shift. Protection fees would increase. Loyalty would be tested. Anyone unhappy with the new structure could walk away or challenge him directly. Silence followed. No one challenged him. They had heard what happened after Valentine's Day. They knew about the 7 men. They knew the timeline. They knew the message. Love had not weakened him. It had sharpened him. One of the older men at the table cleared his throat. "The Russians." "Gone," Adrian replied simply. No further questions. The meeting ended quickly. As the men filed out, they did so carefully. Respectfully. No one avoided eye contact. No one tested him. His reputation had not diminished. It had grown. Fear had grown with it. That night, the penthouse glowed softly with candlelight. White roses lined the hallway again. But this time there was no public display. No rented restaurant. No outside eyes. Just them. Adrian stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, finishing the final touches on dinner. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the room. He wanted to replace the memory of broken glass and gunfire with something else. Something warm. Zara stepped inside quietly. She paused in the doorway. "You cooked?" she asked. He turned slightly. "Yes." She walked closer, touching one of the white roses gently. "This looks familiar." He nodded. "A better version." The table was set near the window overlooking the ocean. Candles flickered softly. Music played low in the background. They ate slowly. Talked lightly. Laughed easily. There was no tension in the air. Only comfort. After dinner, he pulled her toward him in the living room. They danced slowly to a song neither of them fully heard. His hand rested at her waist. Her head rested against his shoulder. For a moment, everything felt simple. Later they moved to the couch. The candles burned lower. She watched him quietly. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. He stilled immediately. "What is it?" She reached for his hand and guided it gently to her stomach. He frowned slightly. "I went to the doctor," she continued softly. His eyes sharpened. 8 weeks, she said. Silence. The words took a moment to settle. He blinked once. Then again. "Pregnant?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He stared at her, searching her face for certainty. "You're sure?" "Yes." The room felt smaller suddenly. His hand remained on her stomach. Careful. As if he might hurt something without meaning to. "Our child?" he whispered. She smiled gently. "Yes." Emotion crossed his face too quickly to fully name. Joy. Fear. All at once. He exhaled slowly. "I'm going to be a father." "Yes." He sat back slightly, staring at the ocean beyond the windows. "This world," he said quietly. She knew what he meant. "It's dangerous," he finished. "Yes," she agreed calmly. He looked at her again. "I don't want that danger near you. Near the baby." "You already don't allow it near me," she said gently. He shook his head slightly. It's different now. She moved closer. You protected me, she reminded him. You came back. He closed his eyes briefly. That won't change, he said firmly. His voice hardened slightly. No one will come near you. Near our child. She smiled faintly. There it is. He looked confused. That look. What look? The terrifying one. He almost laughed. I'm serious. So am I. She touched his face softly. You don't scare me, she said. You protect. He swallowed. You'll be overprotective. Probably. You'll install cameras everywhere. Yes. You'll probably scare the pediatrician. Absolutely. She laughed softly. He leaned down and pressed his forehead gently against hers. I won't let anything happen, he said quietly. I know. He looked down again at her stomach. It was still flat. No visible change. But everything had changed. Our child, he repeated softly. She watched him carefully. You're not upset? Upset, he echoed. He looked at her as if the word did not belong in the same room. No, he said. His voice was steady now. Afraid? Yes. She nodded. So am I. But not regretful. Never. He leaned down and kissed her slowly. There was no rush. Only promise. He pulled back slightly and looked into her eyes. You changed everything, he said quietly. She tilted her head. You made me stronger. She smiled faintly. Love didn't make you weak, she said softly. He held her gaze. No, he agreed. It made me unstoppable. He pulled her close again, one hand still resting carefully over her stomach. Outside, the ocean moved steadily beneath the moonlight. Inside, a new future had begun. Not softer. Not weaker. Stronger. Because now he had more to protect. And more to fight for.